They guard the doorways to our country,
protecting us from drug cartels, even terrorists. But the KHOU 11 News I-Team finds increasingly agents at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection are being charged with corruption and even working for the other side.
And investigative reporter Mark Greenblatt says the federal agency may not be doing enough to stop it. So, Mark, what have you found out?
Lucy, Greg, believe it or not, what we found is already sparking calls for congressional hearings. Border guards and other employees in trouble, even caught with drugs, some going scot-free, even with a pension that you pay for. Take a look. What you're seeing is money, $4,000 of it, being counted for a payoff. Who's it going to? This man, United States border agent Solomon Ruiz, assigned to the U.S.-Mexican border. But little does he know the money he's taking isn't from a member of a drug cartel, but rather from the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
He was guarding drug shipments using his position as an officer.
FBI Deputy Assistant Director David Cardona says Ruiz wasn't the only border agent doing it. U.S. federal agents were using their positions to guard and allow drug shipments to come into America.
That's correct. And this went on for a number of years.
Until that $4,000 payoff.
Amazingly, these people sell their ethics for small dollar figures.
What may surprise you is just how many American federal agents here on this side of the border are violating important regulations every year, sometimes even taking money or sexual favors in exchange for doing something that violates national security.
For example, federal figures show since 2004, over 120 federal border protection employees arrested or indicted for corruption, with 92 of them charged with the more serious mission-compromising corruption. And Cardona says,
the threat is serious.
Take this man. As a Border Patrol agent, Luis Aguilar waved cars and trucks in from Mexico in exchange for $2,000 a passenger. But over the years, it added up. And he says he doesn't know what or who he let cross our borders.
That's a threat to Houston. That's a threat to Chicago. That's a threat to L.A., New York.
Congressman Michael McCaul chairs the House Homeland Security Oversight Committee.
The idea that someone tasked with protecting the border is taking bribes from illegals crossing into the United States is just reprehensible.
And the problem may be how the CBP polices its own employees. For example, does it make any sense to you to only polygraph Border Patrol agents before you get hired and never do a polygraph afterwards?
It makes no sense, because the corruption is not going to take place before they get hired. The corruption takes place after they're hired.
In fact, in the CBP's own files, we found employees knowingly and inappropriately associating with informants or criminal suspects. But even worse was their punishment. One got just a 5-day suspension. Another, a mere reprimand, and then went back on the job. Then there's this: material and intentional falsification of documents or statements. The CBP's guide says that includes committing perjury, providing false testimony, and knowingly making a false statement or accusation. If I were caught falsifying an important federal document, what would happen to me?
You would be prosecuted.
And even the CBP's own guide recommends an automatic firing. And yet we found example after example where employees got just 5-day or 2-day suspensions, even just reprimands.
It's outrageous.
Congressman John Culberson is the vice chair of Homeland Security.
What you've uncovered, Mark, is an obvious and very dangerous flaw in our law enforcement system.
Because we also discovered this: 50 CBP employees found in possession, use, sale, or distribution of illegal drugs or substances. 19 were fired, but 2 got just a suspension. 4 only received reprimands. And the rest? Well, 25 employees were allowed to resign or retire with a pension, thereby closing any administrative investigation. Why? Well, the CBP told us, because then, when the employee quits, they're off our rolls. If you know the heat's coming, all you have to do to stop it is simply retire or resign.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's just outrageous and unacceptable.
But we found hundreds of CBP employees had done just that. Many just after receiving notice they were going to be fired.
You can't just walk away and not have a mark on your record.
So we went to the nation's capital for answers. But
The leadership here at Customs and Border Protection repeatedly promised to go on camera and talk about all of this. And then they backed away.
to which Chairman McCaul says,
Well, they can't hide, and I have the powers to hold a hearing and subpoena them if necessary.
Now, we should note that the U.S. Attorney for our area says that even if some of these employees do quit or retire, if the crime was serious enough, he will still prosecute them. But he also says because of limited resources, crimes like drug possession often get tossed back to the officials at Customs and Border Protection, so they can instead take administrative action against the employee. Now, the problem? Well, senior staff say that federal rules prevent them from doing anything once a worker quits or retires, even while they're under investigation. Lucy Gregg.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it, Mark?
A lot of work to do here, so.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.